Well, all right, Freight Nation, welcome back to another podcast by truckstop.com. Really appreciate you joining us today. Today's going to be a little bit of stroll on the history of the trucking industry and a history of the most impactful show and event inside of the transportation industry. And so I'm super excited about it. It's something that really is has been a part of my life since 1998. And I get to tell people all about how I get to go to this really, really cool show that's in Louisville, Kentucky in March every year, and how important it is to my life. And so I'm really excited for Toby Young, who is the president of Exhibit Management Associates, who produces the Mid-American Trucking Show, to join us today. He's my friend. We've become good friends, and for over a long time, we got a lot in common with each other. And I'm really excited that he's going to be on Freight Nation today to just talk about the show and what's going on at the show, and then how it can be a benefit to you listening. So Toby, thanks a lot for joining.
Oh, thanks for having me, Brent. It's always a pleasure to meet with you, and just love catching up.
Yeah, man, no doubt. In 1998, when I started with Overdrive Magazine, I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would think of the third or fourth week in March as one of my favorite weeks of the year. I never thought that I would ever be so excited to go to a show that's so big you got to wear your track shoes to get from one end to the other. I never thought I'd be so excited to eat the best pork chop sandwich in America. So I have an extreme fondness for the Mid-America Trucking Show. A lot of that is because of you and your leadership and your family's leadership in the show, but it's also how dedicated you have been to supporting the owner-operator and the small carrier part of the marketplace. The show's for the entire trucking industry, but you really have had a heart for supporting that owner-operator. And so just appreciate what Mid-America has meant to me. So I like for the Freight Nation people to hear the story, because you're very unique. Your history in this industry is very unique. You didn't I got out of school and decided to go to work for some company that produces a truck show. You were born into this marketplace. So I'd love for you to tell the Freight Nation watchers and listeners a little bit on your background that with the Mid-America Truck Show, and how you and part of your family got into this. And so give us the history, man.
Sure. Yeah, more or less born into it, tried to get away from it, and just got drugged back into it. So yeah, that's my story. But so the story of Matt's and myself and my family, the show was started back in 1972 by my grandfather, Paul K. Young, whose namesake graces our Truck Beauty Championships. Great man. Didn't get to work with him a lot, but saw how dedicated he was, and definitely was a big part of my upbringing and for who I am today. But back in 1972, he and three friends kind of had the idea of, hey, we want to do an event. And he was based out of Louisville and Somerset and just kind of the Kentucky area. And to paint the picture, back then in 1972, there were a few big shows, and Mid-America wasn't even on the radar, wasn't even a thought. There was a big show in Boston. There was the International Trucking Show, which has since gone back and forth between California and Las Vegas, and there were some smaller regional shows. But their idea was basically, hey, that big show that's out west, the International Trucking Show, we want that here. And so they had the idea. At the time, my grandfather was working for the Kentucky Motor Transport Association, who is now the Kentucky Trucking Association. He was a lobbyist. He had been a used tire salesman for trucking, and just he and three friends had the idea, hey, let's start it here. And so they kind of pulled resources and brought in some consultants to try to get it going. They had lots of industry contacts, having worked in the industry for so long, and different manufacturers and suppliers and whatnot. And so pulled the show together, got all their suppliers and manufacturers to participate. That first year, 1972, 98 exhibitors and around 4,000 attendees. And so definitely a humble beginning. And since then, our show has grown to be, it's over 1 million square foot now, 800, 900, even 1,000 exhibitors at times, 50, 60, 70,000 attendees, just a huge show. And, we've now supplanted the International Trucking Show. Doesn't really take place in that form anymore. The Boston Trucking Show hasn't taken place in 15 years now. GATS that you were a big part of, hasn't my family kind of helped get that going at
Yep,
some
sure did.
point,
You're a
but
big vital part of it.
but since then hasn't taken place, and don't know that it will. And so we're kind of the last show of our kind remaining. Um, but back to my story. So, grandfather to my dad, my uncles, aunts, brother, cousins, we've all pitched in at some point. My life, I started in high school, stuffing envelopes and, working registration and just being a lumper for, a trade show, basically, back since I was in high school, 13 years old. Kind of didn't have that vision for my future of working in the trade show industry or the trucking industry. And so went to college. I have a degree in chemistry. I have a degree in chemical engineering. Spent, 7 years in college getting multiple degrees, and, did very well for myself. But, basically once I graduated, the show was kind of going through a transition, and had been dating my current wife for like 7 years, and she was ready to set up roots. And the job offers I got coming out of engineering school were all in the South, and so like Texas, Louisiana area. And so just had a discussion with my dad, and he needed some help, was going through some personal and work troubles. And so I came in and started in sales, and then did the website, then PR, media, done just about everything. And now I'm more or less the last full-time young remaining. And so it, still bring my dad in to work shows. He's still been working shows, bring my brother in, and uncles and anybody else that can, help us out. But so it's a family show, and definitely trucking is family. And so it's really nice to have the same kind of setup here. And so we just work year round to put on this really big, great show.
Right. Well, so you mentioned a couple things about, starting in 72, we're obviously in 2024. So you got 50 plus years at this show. So I do want to talk a little bit about your relationship, like working with your family and working with things, because trucking is obviously many times a family business. So talk a little bit about, like, as you were a young man, because I remember you saying that you started kind of, and my guess is they didn't ask you to come work at the show. Your granddad and dad probably said, "Hey, you're working. This is what you're going to be doing." So, by the way, my dad was the same way with me. He had a small steel processing company. And if we ever had something that had to get out over the weekend or something like that, and get on a truck or something, it was, hey, Randy, Brent, David, that's my two brothers and me, you're working Saturday morning, be there at 8:00. So I'm sure you experienced the same thing. But over those years before you took over and were like leading the show, what were some of the unique things you saw at the show that were like, you were like, wow, how am I going to solve that problem?
Yeah, definitely been a lot of those, and definitely working with family, having, something I may see as a problem, no one else may see that also as a problem. And so, trying to clean things up as I think is best for our trajectory. Certainly that was a big part of the struggles. But yeah, there's been a lot of stuff like vendors that I don't think contribute to the trajectory that I want us to be on, maybe the, non-professional vendors, or, some that have really great shows and people really enjoy seeing, but, it's not really focused on the trucking industry. And so trying to filter some of that out, and, just make sure that we're focused on our core competencies and focused on making the show better each and every year. And so definitely, like we've talked about this, butted heads with family, and especially my dad, at the time when I kind of took over, he'll say, when you retired me. But, at the time that I kind of took over, been doing it for a very long time. My dad had, by the time he retired, had 30 plus years in, and a ton of experience and contacts and everything else. And so definitely gleaned a lot of that off of him. But it's tough when you're the new guy coming in, and family can make it even tougher. But when you recommend a change or think, hey, we should do this or we should change that, that's not always met with, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it. And so definitely some of the vendors that we passed on in the past, and even the trajectory of focusing on bringing more events under the MATS umbrella, hasn't necessarily been met with, yeah, let's do that. That's the best for the show. But just, we're like any other company. We roll the dice sometimes and don't always make the right decisions, but we just learn from them and try to keep getting better each and every year.
Well, you hit on two things. Number one, I want to, if you give a couple minutes bump, what's it like working like in concert with your dad and sort of conflict resolution, those sort of things? Like what what would be your advice there? Because like I said, trucking is a very family oriented, and a lot of times you're working with family across the board, and it's not uncommon. So talk a little bit about that. What would be your advice on navigating that? And then I want to talk a little bit about the show itself. So yeah, talk a little bit about working with your family.
So my advice on conflict resolution with families, don't do what I did.
Oh no, really?
No. So, well, I mean, I have, especially as a younger meetings professional, I'm fresh out of college, and this was a former me, but in my 200 plus credit hours of college, I have 13 hours of B's, and everything else was A's. I graduated top of my class in engineering school, did not get even a B in chemical engineering, and graduated valedictorian of speed school here at U of L. And so, not touting my accolades, but just want your listeners to understand that smart in some regards, really dumb in others.
Aren't we all?
When it comes to conflict resolution, I am not, especially in my younger years, not the person that anyone should model after. And did I mention that my dad is, a pretty short guy with a chip on his shoulder, and we have very similar personalities. Very intelligent, can be very abrasive. When we first started out and when I began proposing changes, it was not always met with, yeah, that's a great idea, Toby, let's go. No, sir. And so some heated conversations and a lot of after the fact, hey, that was a good idea, good on you, whatever. But in the heat of the moment, we are both very passionate. And so we have done everything we could to get our points across. But at the end of the day, it's family. And, we're all working towards that same goal. And so my best advice would be, to just take a step back out of yourself and to be able to just recognize, hey, we all have the same goals and we're all working towards those. We all have different personalities and they may come in conflict with one another, but the reality is we're all trying to get to that finish line. And so I've oftentimes had to just take a break and say, hey, at the time I didn't present this as well as I could have, but here's the reasons that I think we should do this. And cooler heads always prevail, and still love and talk to each other every day. I wouldn't change anything about how we resolved our conflicts and pulled shows together. It's been a tumultuous roller coaster ride, but it's been a blast. And it's what makes this job great, honestly, is if it was the same every year and everything was just smooth sailing, I don't think it would be the job for me, because I'm that person who loves challenges, whether it be the family conflicts or the exhibitor conflicts or whatever the case may be. It's never a dull moment in this business.
Well, it sounds like with the fact that you were making straight A's and the one of the two most difficult undergraduate curriculums in college, chemical engineering, that you like to problem solve. You like to look at the problem and be able to solve it. So not surprised that you were bumping heads with your dad, because working with your dad can be a real challenge. So when you took a step back and you were, by the way, this is a great pro tip for 8 Nation. What Toby's talking about is like give it a moment and kind of give it a chance for maybe for someone to consider something. So did you find that when you kind of took that step back, that was like the pathway to to like maybe getting your dad to like listen more to you or to consider what you were trying to bring to him?
Definitely. For me, we've had this conversation with my wife many times, just, kind of with family and friends and everyone you come in contact with, you learn two things from everyone: how to be or how not to be. And so, with my dad, definitely took a ton of advice and learned a ton from him, but also, he can be kind of gruff and quick to react and things like that. And so from him and from our interaction, learned how not to be. And it's just interesting. Just I think as we all grow older, when I'm talking about these scenarios, I'm 25 years old. I'm fresh out of college. I think I own the world. And I, very book smart, very dumb in every other regard, just candidly. And so, I see it in my kids now. We've talked a lot about our kids. I have 3 kids, and it's just interesting. The one in college is so smart. She's so intelligent. She is going to do big things. I can look at her and just know how book smart she is, but know how, world or street dumb that she is. She just doesn't have the experience. And so, from my dad's perspective, he's looking at this young kid who may be really book smart, but he doesn't have the experience yet. And all that comes with time. And so if I wish I could go back in time and tell my younger self, hey, relax, sometimes experience is way more valuable than book smart.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, that's great. I love that. That's another super good pro tip. All right, so Freight Nation, this is super great. So when you meet people, you need to determine 2 things. I think, Toby, I've never heard anybody say this, by the way. I don't know where you got this, but this is great advice. When you meet somebody and you've got to be working with them, you need to understand 2 things: how to be or how not to be. So that's easy to remember. So that's super good. So my dad was a little different than your dad. My dad was 6'5", ex-professional football player. He's giant. He was a pretty kind, gentle guy because he didn't have to use anything else. He just would look at you and go, this is the way it's going to be. And he's so big that, I'm just an average size. I'm an average size guy. My dad is nothing like average, and so, but there's nothing like, Toby, that the sort of satisfaction of knowing that you get to spend that time with your dad and you got to grow up and he got to grow more mature as well in working with you. And I had the same benefit with my dad, and my dad passed away almost 4 years ago, and I still miss him every day, man. But I'm thankful that I got to work with him. It was lots of fun. I worked with him as a kid, and then we actually owned a business together, kind of like you and your dad. So a lot of similarities there. All right, so you mentioned something earlier. I want to hit on this because I think this is important in trucking. Many times, whether you're a 1 truck entity, 2 truck, 10 truck, 20 truck, you got to wear a lot of hats. So you got to know how to run the business. And you told me that when you started working for Exhibit Management Associates, back when you were a young man, you said you were 25. Was that right when you started? 25?
Roughly, yeah.
Roughly 25 years old. You said you served a lot of different roles, from sales to PR to website to all sorts of different parts. I'm sure it was operations, all this sort of thing. So give a little perspective on how that helped you when you transitioned into running it, being the leader of it. And granted, you got a team that works with you. Nobody does anything themselves. But what was the benefit of being able to go through all those different segments of parts of the business that helps you in your leadership standpoint today?
Sure. For me, it's just perspective. To be able to, it's one thing when you say, hey, do this to someone who, is a report. But the reality is, if you've been there, done that, you can just speak from, again, that experience. You can be book smart and understand how something's built, but if you have experience with it, you can understand how it actually operates. And then you're on more of like an even level. And that's how I've always approached everyone that I work with, or, whether employed or above me or whatever, is I try to lead by example. And so I listed a bunch of things that I've done, but I've also, on the weekends, to supplement my income, I've cleaned our offices. I take out the trash. I deliver the packages that we have going out. I take them to the post office. I have never asked anyone in this business or others to do anything that I haven't first done myself. And so it's just really important for me to have, there's just a grassroots basic understanding first, and then to lead by example. I'm not going to ask you to take out the trash for me until you've seen me take out the trash, because I'm not saying that it's beneath me and I'm asking you to do it for that reason. We're all trying to get to the finish line, and this is one task that has to be covered. I'm willing to do it, but I'm covered up with this. Could you do that for me? And so, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's, you see it in businesses, the leadership, the thing that's hung on the wall, a picture, and it's who's a boss and who's a leader. For me, I don't want to be a boss. I don't want to be the guy who's saying, do this from my desk and cracking the whip, so to speak. I want to be the guy that's in the trenches among everyone else. And, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get to the finish line.
Yeah. Super good advice, man. Super. Yeah. It pays to to know the navigation of things. So if you've done it yourself, then you know how to navigate. All right. So you took over in 2006, and last time I checked, it's 2024. And you've seen a lot in your tenure in leading the largest show in the industry. So what were some of the things like? So you took over a show that and look, everything has to innovate, everything has to continue to improve itself. As Pettis Randall used to say, you're always in the business of reinventing yourself. If you're in business, you're in the business of reinventing yourself because you have to keep it new, you have to keep it going forward. So what were some of the pivotal things from 2006 to 2024 that you saw were sort of things that you sort of said, okay, or your team got together and said, it would be good for us to start thinking about this and doing some of these things. And then once you finish commenting on that, I want to talk about what you talked about about the events part of like changing the event, moving the event forward. So what'd you see those years? What were some of the pivotal things?
Sure. I mean, just anyone who's been in this industry for, since that time frame knows that the only constant is change. Everything is changing. The companies, the players, the regulations, the compliance, everything. It's just ever evolving. And so I think the most important thing for us has always been to just be adaptable. And so, I took the approach many years back that we just want to be the forum. We just want to be the in-person event for whatever is going on in the industry. And so, 20 years ago when it was the innovation in equipment and the lease purchase, and then when it became the technology and the load board, we just want to make sure that the companies with those products view mats as the place to be. And so whoever is driving the industry, wherever it's headed, but whoever is driving it, that that technological change, we want them to come to mats. And so it's been manufacturers, it's been suppliers, it's been the tech, it's been the load boards, whatever the case may be. We just want everyone to view mats as that go-to forum for a lot of things. And so it's, the product unveils, the events for showcasing, your latest, for garnering feedback from your customers, for the market research and the demoing and everything. We've, kind of throughout the years, all of the what's in vogue has changed. But the constant is that Mats is that really great forum for showcasing it. Obviously with the internet, you can, showcase things in different ways. And, we're on a call and we're in 2 different states, and that wasn't all that common 20 years ago. But the reality is, and this is some opinion and some observation, that, the industry is a see it, touch it, feel it, demo it kind of industry. No one's running out and making, a $200,000 truck and trailer purchase without first demoing it. And I feel the same way about the technology products, whether it's, a physical technology product or web-based or cloud-based or whatever the case may be. Everyone wants to demo things. And so I'm that type of person. I'm a hands-on person. And that's really what Mats is all about, is just being that central meeting place for whatever's going on in the industry. And so we come one, come all. If you're focused on demoing or bringing new product to market or talking to your customers and just you're not selling anything, you're just wanting to get feedback on an existing product for what is the next iteration of that product, Mats is just a really great place for that. And so that's been really my main focus for many years now, is just to make sure that we come off as this is the event that we want to be at for all of these things.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. So you've kind of continued to innovate. I guess a lot of it is getting feedback from those that come in the market. I know that maybe a little bit more than a decade ago, there started to become a little bit more of an international flair at the show. Could you talk a little bit about how this marketplace that has become more than just the domestic manufacturers?
Sure. So for me, it's not really about mats or trucking. It's just about our world. And so, 10, 15 years ago, it was just tougher to bring products from one market to the next, or if you manufactured a product in another country to bring it to market here. And I think, the technology and the reality that our world is getting smaller because of connectivity, and Mats has been part of that as well. It's just easier for these international manufacturers, suppliers to bring their products to the States. I remarked this just like a month ago. A lot of our international exhibitors are just getting better at marketing. I don't think that they really, some of them had a really great grasp on how to market products in this, North American market, and they've just gotten better at it. And so, us being that forum, they've chosen us to showcase some of their innovations, and we've done everything that we can to make it so that they feel welcome, that we have lowered the barriers to entry, and that we, really focus on them, to eliminate their pain points and to make the experience good for them. If you kind of do all of those things, then everything else falls into place, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, no doubt. So yeah, I just remember seeing different countries represented in different parts of the show, where some of them had big footprints, some of them had smaller footprints. And you're right, the world has become fairly flat because of the internet. But unless something dramatically changes with human beings, we will always appreciate and need the touch and feel in anything, especially in our industry. You need to get inside of a truck. You need to touch a truck to understand whether or not you have a preference for it. So, touching and feeling is pretty important. And what always strikes me is that, okay, let me ask you this question. So, when you were a little kid, and so you had free access to the entire show floor, right? I'm sure you could go anywhere you wanted to. What, when you were a kid, harken back just some of the questions before, but one time. So when you were a little kid and you had free access, I'm Paul Young's grandson, so like, oh yeah, sure, kid, come on in. Where were some of the great places, the cool places you like to go in the show?
Well, the number one, and it's not necessarily a place, it's just during setup. It is, and honestly, even to this day, I will go to the show before the first exhibitor is there, or when the first few exhibitors start to get there. And it is really strange and really interesting just to see this huge mass of concrete. It's just, our show is roughly 1 million square feet, and so you can just see this huge expanse of concrete. The lights are on, but it's just a big open expanse of concrete. And I don't know that exists in a lot of different places. So this is before the first exhibitor comes in. And then to come back a day later and a night later, and whatever the case may be, and just to see how it gets built up. It is amazing. We've done some time-lapse video just to kind of showcase how fast things come together. And so, especially as a kid, like, I would come in and, my grandfather had well, for those that know him, it's going back 30 years now. He had this green, it's kind of like a golf cart.
I remember his green golf cart. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So it's not really a golf cart. It's like a weird trade show cart.
Right. I remember it.
Yeah. So when he passed, we did like a memorial, and that was part of it. Like, all the photos you have of him are him on the green golf cart. But he would take us around, during setup, or as we're unloading those, brochures or prospectuses or whatever. And, it was just really amazing to me to ride around the cart, see the expanse, and then to see everybody knew him. I think it was a bit of a different world back then. It was, just people were a little bit more connected in a strange way. And, you're a typical career, you're 30 years at the same job. And so he had so many connections. And so just to watch how he interacted as we drove around the show and saw people getting set up and things like that, I just really love that. That's what I enjoyed. Most people don't get to see that on the setup side, but for, just the general attendees, just the really cool things to see. I love to get in the truck still. I brought my kids to check it out during setup. I've for every one of my kids, and they're girls, so they're not really into trucks, stereotypically, but to take them to the show during setup before I get super stressed with everything that's going on, and just let them see and understand why I work these long hours. And I think to some extent I wasn't old enough to have intelligent conversations like that with my grandfather, but I think that's why he did that with me, is just to, hey, this is why I work so hard, is because I'm building this. And so it was just really cool to see all the connections that he had and the people that he knew, and that that's my job, is to build this show, and you get to see it built over the course of a week, and it's just really cool.
Yeah, that's super cool. I remember back in '98, when the first time I came to the show, I remember meeting your granddad and your dad, and both of them. I remember that. Not that you bring up the green golf cartish thing, I remember that. But I think I met him back out on the back parking lot where the old Truck Beauty Contest used to be held. Then it was the Pride and Polish with Overdrive. Now it's the wonderful Paul K. Young Memorial Truck Beauty Contest. It's the official. Tell me the official name. It's the Paul K.
Well, I've
Young.
kind of pulled the memorial out. It's the Paul K. Young Truck Beauty Championship.
There you go. Paul K. Young Truck Beauty Championships. But I just remember how unique it was, and seeing 100 or plus trucks out there and these beautiful rigs that just like people had spent so much time and effort and energy. And I just remember your dad's passion for wanting to talk to the truck drivers and wanting to talk to the people that were your dad and your granddad's passion for that. So it's really, really unique to see. So super cool. So yeah, I can just imagine as a kid, it's just kind of like your own playground there, just kind of going around and having a good time with it. I know I always enjoyed that when I was in my dad's warehouse. I just kind of felt like, I'm the son of the guy that runs the place. And so I get to kind of have, get to go around and do stuff. Always a good thing. So one of the things that is unique about your show is it's not just about the exhibition. You guys have always had a focus on education, on bringing content that helps people improve their businesses, improve their things. Talk a little bit about that and what it looked like yesterday, and then what's it look like today, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you're thinking about going forward. But the focus on that, how's that helped you in building this legendary show?
Sure. So, for us, the show has always had these different components of it. It's the exhibition obviously is the big part, and then you have the events, and then you have the entertainment. And so we do lots of interviews with attendees, and I myself love talking with the drivers and all of our attendees just to get a feel for, what they're going through, what their plight is, how we can help, how MATS helps them. But in a lot of those interviews, we realize a lot of people come for the entertainment and view like the exhibition as, the added bonus. And we're trying to mix that up a little bit and just make them to better point out that, the show is about helping your business. That is the core competency of the show. All of these vendors, that's their focus. Yes, of course, they want to sell you a product or for you to demo this, but the reality is that the main point is, let's make you more money. Let's make you more efficient. Let's get you more time at home. Whatever the case may be, there's a product on the show floor that can help you achieve that. More profitability, more efficiency, whatever the case may be. And so many years back, when we started up the seminar program, that was the primary goal is just, yes, our exhibitors are showcasing product and services on the show floor, but let them also talk to you in kind of a closed forum where they can show you, hey, it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to buy our product, but let us explain to you how we can make things better for you. And whatever that means to you, money, time, whatever. And so we've really kind of tweaked things to focus more on education. And so, just before COVID, we started with our ProTalks seminar series. And so that is, it's grown to 2 stages. It's like 45 events that are put on by exhibitors and even third parties, and a lot of the big names that everyone will recognize: FMCSA, OOIDA, Alpha Drivers, Rate Per Mile Masters. We just started reaching out to, we have all these connections, and MATS is a great forum, and so reached out to these companies, entities, individuals, and said, hey, do you want to share your experience and expertise? If so, come to the show. You tell us what you want to talk about. You tell us how you can benefit our audience. And so really leverage their experience and expertise, not to pitch product, but just to say, hey, this is what I've done. This is how I've done better. I've used these products, or this is how I look at my P&L and balance sheet, or this is what I focus on, and this is what helped me go from 1 to 10 trucks or 10 to 100 trucks, and to really leverage that thought leadership and just the experience of our attendees, because a major component of MATS is the networking. And so we basically help some of these individuals and companies rise to the top that are really focused on this. And some of them have just this altruistic goal of just making the industry better. And where better to start than at the individual driver level? How can we improve their lives? And maybe it's a health thing, or maybe it's a product thing, or a service thing, or just a financial thing, a way to crunch the numbers to determine your profitability, or how much money you're making per mile, whatever the case may be. We just want to host that education. And so that's really taken off. We've built it into these 2 stages, and eventually we'll grow it to more. And then we've also welcomed other events that have kind of that same focus, and I think that's a good segue into like the CMC Live event that we're bringing in, that you guys are helping us bring with Kevin Rutherford. I think he has a similar goal, and it's just to improve the lives and profitability of the industry, drivers, small fleets, whatever. And so we just want to be hosts for that education. No matter what form it takes place, there's so much that it can be learned during this 3 days of MATS. We've kind of spun it to make attendees realize, hey, definitely come for the concert, come for the truck pool, come for the PKY Truck Beauty Championships, but spend the whole day here, because you can really have a significant impact on your business if you look at it from the mindset of, how can I improve my life? How can I improve my business on the show floor? If you seek out those types of people, you will find them on the show floor, and I guarantee you they'll make your business and life better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, no doubt. We've seen that. I know that Truck Stop's been a big part of the Mid-America Truck Show since we started in 1995, and so it's always been it's been the spot that we our core audience is an owner operator, somebody that owns 1 to 9 Class 8 trucks, and so we find great reward in being there, and it's, I think it's because it's our goals agree with a lot of your goals, as far as like creating a place where it's not just coming in and experience one thing. There's all kinds of aspects on being able to grow the business. And to me, I just look at it, you've created more than just a trade show. You've created somewhat of a cultural crossroads for trucking to come meet at every single year, like a homecoming, almost a homecoming place for this part of the market. And I know this because I've talked to them. I know owner operators that basically take their vacation time to come to Mid-America, because it is where they meet their fellow truckers. They meet the people that they work around in a really big office space called the United States every single day. But they get to come because trucking is so culturally bound that it's its own marketplace. And so I appreciate that you're continuing to want to push things forward and create more opportunities. And the certified master carrier that Let's Trucks bring in, and Truck Stop's happy to partner with you and Let's Truck to bring this to the market, is the goal of it is for it to be an event that is in conjunction with the Mid-America Truck Show. So it's an event on top of an event, or event inside of an event, where it becomes its own part of it, its own DNA part of it. It leads into it. You got a good education session that leads into it. So we're excited about doing that. Where do you see, how does that, when you think about like the bigness of like Mid-America, and you're also one of the last standing in the marketplace, on-site events, live events are very hard and difficult to do, but you have such a history and a foundation already built in this. When you were thinking about like putting an event inside of another event, what was it that motivated you to want to bring something like that in?
Just to continue to serve, honestly. We do post-show interviews every year, and we ask attendees and exhibitors, what can we do? How can we change to better meet your goals? And so, especially the drivers and small fleets that are, business focused at the show, they're already having those networking sessions. They're already doing these things. I've talked to Kevin about it at length. Just, you sit in a truck all day, and so it can be a very solitary job. And so, at MATS, just the networking is such a big part of it. And so with the networking comes, hey, we can have a conversation, and I can educate you on some things and how I'm doing it. You can educate me on some things and how you're doing it. And then the reality is, hey, if we can formalize this to an extent and make it so it's a dedicated time, a dedicated place to focus on these types of education, eliminating pain points, and just the small things that help the bottom line in trucking, that's what we wanted to focus on. And so, again, adopted this, several years back. We would welcome even like a competing event to come to MATS, kind of setting our own goals aside just to recognize, hey, how can we help our audience better meet their goals? And so if it's bringing a competing event in, or helping an exhibitor get an event started, or, whatever the case may be, we just want to be that marketplace, that forum where this exchange of ideas, exchange of expertise takes place. And it can take any form. It can be in the meeting rooms, it can be on the show floor, whatever the case may be. But just there is so much business that gets done on that show floor. My dad's, this was one of the very first things that he said to me. There's a lot of business that gets done on the show floor. I cannot quantify it. I've just been told this so many times. And so we just want to be that central meeting place to continue all of this business getting done. And we just feel like, you have people that have made it up to here and the people that are here. Well, how can we help elevate everyone? And we just feel like a big part of that is with bringing other events under the Matt's umbrella.
Right. I could see other segments of the market coming in, bringing their shows leading into the Mid-America show. So let me ask you this. So is one of your goals for Mid-America to be more than just a 3-day event? Is that one of the reasons why you build these education parts of it, so you can actually distribute that information year round? What's sort of part of the method, the madness in extending Mid-America? Because if getting a scalable foundation into a group is not easy to do, and you've done that. You have an incredible following. You have an incredible size of this audience that comes and trusts you and listen to you. So is part of, how do you extend it beyond the 3 days, but then the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, which is a great experience, but how does Matt's continue to deliver value to the audience that comes during those 3 days?
I think you just hit on the biggest struggle for events, and that's, how can my show is 3 or 4 days, 7 if you include setup, but that's a week. We got 52 of these weeks in the year. How can we expand our presence and continue to serve our mission, to educate and connect? And events are a big part of that. So like with the ProTalks seminar series, we record them and we make them available on our website. So we recognize that with, the drivers, we're all busy, but especially if you're a driver, what are the odds that you're coming through Louisville for that particular weekend to catch that particular hour of that particular education that you want to see? And so this is where the technology can be leveraged to extend the life of a one-time event and to maintain more connectivity with the audience. And so for us, we do record, we host it on our YouTube channel, we feed it back to the attendees and just try to remind them, hey, at Match, you could have learned this. Come next year and see what you can learn, and make these connections and meet these exhibitors and demo these products. And that it's really that's our main pitch, is that you can get so much done in these 3 days. And so I feel like when I hear it from a driver that they've given us their vacation, like you're saying, that there's no bigger thank you. There's no bigger reward than someone saying, hey, I appreciate your event so much. I appreciate you so much that I'm going to give you my vacation time, time in general, but just vacation time. And so the fact that they come here and make Matt's their vacation, 2 days here and maybe another day somewhere else, but it is that annual pilgrimage. It is that annual gathering, family reunion. I've heard it called many times. And so we love that we're viewed as family, and we want to continue that.
Yeah. I tell all our team whenever that we have a lot of new people that come to the show each year. I always make sure I tell them to get your rest, man, because this is definitely a marathon when you come to the show, because there's so much going on. It's so big. And by the time you get to Saturday, there's so many people there that you're having to navigate very slowly around the hall to get to things, because there's such interest in it. All right. So let me ask you a couple of quick questions that I think that a lot of people might want to know. Number one, how many trucks can park in the parking lot? Approximately trucks. How many approximate trucks can park in the parking lot at Mid-America?
There's like 60 acres of parking. Yeah, there's like 30 acres on site, 30 acres off site. And so, a 10 by 80 truck divided by however many feet are in an acre, we break that down. But I can tell you that we have thousands that park. They measure them, how many we have park at Cardinal Stadium, and it's well over 1,000, and that's just half of our parking.
Yeah, I've gone over to the Cardinal Stadium. It is its own homecoming over there as well. All right, look, last question. You may or may not be able to answer this one. I don't know, but I did mention pork chop sandwiches. Do you have any idea how many pork chop sandwiches are sold during the days of the show?
No idea, but I can tell you no idea. I couldn't even venture, but I'll give you 2 anecdotes to put in perspective. When Landline has a blog that takes place around the show called the Pork Chop Diaries. So it's what we're known for.
I did not know they have the Pork Chop Diaries.
100%. Yep.
I've got to
You
get
seen
it on
this? Oh yeah, you gotta check it out. Yeah, every year, Pork Chop Diaries. The one food stuff that everybody mentions when we talk to them. Got to get that pork chop. So it has its own following. And then we talk about family, so a good way to bring it back. So my brother used to work full time here. He now has another job, but still comes and helps us out during the show. And I'm pretty sure I could pay him in pork chops. So he knows Kentucky pork producers. He knows all those folks by name, and I'll know when he has not been doing what I ask him. When he comes back to the show office with, they don't even have containers big enough. They give him it is a bread bag, and it is just stacked with these pork chop sandwiches in it. He'll come back to the show office with like 12, and he'll tell me I'm taking those 6 home, and then the next morning he's like, yeah, I had 2 for dinner. I'm like, well, you had 2 at lunch. You had 2 more for dinner? He's like, yeah, and I'm gonna get some more.
Hey, I'm no different than your brother. I eat at least 2 a day every day of the show. Everybody I work with thinks I'm crazy. I go, look, when you come to the show, in order to get like baptized into the Mid-America Truck Show, you got to come have a pork chop sandwich with me. And to me, Toby, that's one of the things that makes your show and your team's show this unique. And the industry is so thankful that you guys decided back in 1972 to create something that helps our industry continue to join with each other and be around each other and create relationship with each other. And I don't know what this industry would be like without your family's desire to want to continue moving that forward and continue making it happen. And so it's really an honor just to be a part of it. And I've got a unique perspective after 25 plus years coming to it. And the only time I hadn't come is when you didn't have it during COVID, which I know was so hard for you. I got to be, actually, I think I got to be the first person you told that you were canceling it, because I was calling you to say, hey, what's going on? And you were like, I could just tell you were so depressed on talking. You were like, you said, we just made the decision to not have the show. And I remember the stress in your voice, because it matters. The show matters. It matters to the audience. It matters to the manufacturers. It matters to our industry, and it matters to our country. And so thank you so much for bringing this show in, and thanks for continuing and making it better and better each and every year. And I just appreciate you coming on Freight Nation today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I've enjoyed our friendship and our interaction throughout the years, and no better guy than Brent. Thank you.
Oh, you're too kind, man. I appreciate it. Well, Freight Nation, that's a wrap. I hope you learned a little bit more about one of the things that makes our industry great, which is the Mid-America Truck Show. Please come the end of March. It's March 20. Is it 22nd, 23rd, and 24th? Do I got the right dates on that?
21st to the 23rd.
21st, 22nd, 23rd. I was close.
CMC Live on the 20th. Don't forget that.
That's right. CMC Live starts on the 20th, all on Wednesday and half a day on Thursday. Our gratitude for you helping being a great partner and putting this thing on. So Freight Nation, thanks for this. Is a wrap for Freight Nation for today. Appreciate Toby coming on and being a part of it. And I hope you learned a little bit more about the Mid-America Truck Show and what makes it great. We'll see you there in March. And don't forget to work hard, be kind, and stay humble. See you, Freight Nation.
On behalf of the Truck Stop team, thanks for listening to this episode of Freight Nation. To find out more about the show, head to truckstop.com/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Until then, keep on trucking and exploring the open roads with Freight Nation, a trucking podcast.